so this is week 2, and we are exploring the topic of getting comfortable without answers. So do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that of all of the 4 things that we'll be talking about, I think this is the hardest one for parents to get. And I think that it's just, it's simple in terms of what this topic will do for you, but it's not an easy topic. So you have to be a little bit patient with your learning curve about this. But there's so much power in this direction. So I'm maybe most excited about this point, this aspect of parenting. So I find that for most parents, I talked about this in the first segment a little bit. The first thing that happens for parents when their kids are going through something, or when they face challenges with their kid, is they go into a reaction, which I think everybody listening to this probably is all too familiar with what theirs are. You get a little sick of it once you start seeing how thought is sort of repetitive and follows you around, stalks you. That for most parents, as soon as their kid gets difficult or uncooperative or sassy or is doing badly in schools, depressed, troubled, that the parents immediately go off into their little land of fear or anxiety, worst case scenarios. They go into the future, fast forward 10 years. How are they going to hold a job? And they're 11. So they go into sort of judgment, judging themselves, judging their kid, or blaming their husband or social media, or they go in or blaming themselves. So they go into sort of a reaction, which I don't have to, I probably don't have to elaborate too much, but reactions are not good as far as a place to parent from, in that, when we get into a state of anxiety ourselves about something, you get bad content. So what you're living in is essentially memories. So when we get upset, what fills your head is old thoughts that you've thought before. So they're typically, the worst case scenarios are just repurposed bad memories. So you just populate what you think could happen with whatever you've thought of so far, that all the bad things that could happen to a kid that does that. So you go into your memory bank, and so they're just we're sort of limited in our worldview, and we're drawing from our limited experience of life, generally the negative part, and have a feeling of we're sort of in it alone at that point. It's just us and this problem, and it's and we're left with a sort of a closed set of materials. So you just get whatever ideas you've tried to handle this problem, and generally we just keep recycling our old tactics of, well, let me talk them out of it, let me tell them how they are worth it and they are a good person, let me tell them that they're not fat, so we sort of, well, let me make them eat, we kind of get we have like our 2 or 3 things that we've heard of or thought of, or that our parents try, and then we go do that.
Yeah.
So we get sort of,
limited repertoire of behavior, isn't it?
Yeah, super limited, right? And so we kind of get bad content when we're handling our parenting challenges, and we're anxious or afraid or upset. But we also get the bad morale of sort of being impaired in our feeling, being sort of, everything we do is kind of tense, tight. We're sort of, we're at our worst. And yet, in other areas of life, probably every day, if you look, when things go wrong, there is a way in which we know how to stay open. And so we handle things. If we don't panic and freak out, like the people around us, sometimes we're the person that keeps it together. It just seems really obvious that you wouldn't freak out. You just look at, okay, well, we need to look at this first. Let's not think about those things. We'll handle those when we get there. So we have this sort of a creativity, I think, about when people travel. Travel is, for some reason, maybe not for everybody, but for some reason, travel is one of those funny areas of life where we seem to have absolutely no remnants of our bad habits when we travel. Oftentimes people will go and they're easygoing when things go wrong. They're sort of in it for the experience. If they miss their train, they kind of get in this sort of discovery mode because they know, I'm going to experience something new. You can't take your ideas from your country and your life with you because you're someplace new. So there's some way in which people seem to do what I'm pointing to in parenting. There's certain areas people do that great.
Yeah.
And now this isn't for those of you that travel makes you really uptight.
No, but there's always an area, isn't there, like work?
Yes.
Or going for a walk. Or
Exactly.
Areas, yeah. You go out to a restaurant you've never been to before, and you get a menu you've never seen before, and
exactly
figure it out. Yeah.
So you sort of people get into it, and hobbies are like that too. People get into things, and even if they're really good at it, like I have a woman this morning that she paints. When she sort of gets stressed, she paints, and she's an amazing artist, but she doesn't really do it to be an artist. She just does it because it relaxes her, and her learning curve's fantastic. She's kind of, her friends that are artists are sort of annoyed by her because she can jump into different media, and she just is able to try things and have it come together. If she doesn't like it, she starts again. Like her learning curve is really sharp. And we have a part of us that does that, but we fall asleep at the wheel a little bit when it comes to parenting. We sort of lose ourselves. And like I said in the first segment of this, is there's a little bit of white noise. We sort of get used to the feeling of strain and tension and don't realize that we're uptight and need to loosen up the way that we do when we travel. So there's something that happens when we have things going on around us and we don't have answers or a solution or a plan when we're traveling, and that we don't seem to port over into our parenting life. And I want to talk about the power of what's required of us to do this in the parenting realm that we do so easily in traveling.
Yeah.
That there's in my mind, when you face something, excuse me, when you face something like your kid won't eat, she thinks she's overweight, she won't eat, she's lost 20 pounds. I have a client right now in that situation, and she won't talk to me. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. So I'm coaching the mom, and mom says, so she's lost 20 pounds. I don't know what that is in your stones, but that she's, the first thing she did was get freaked out. And the first thing her husband wanted to do was force her to come to the dinner table every night and eat one meal a day.
Yeah.
While they're there. And which worked out really badly, needless to say, that strategy. I'm not saying that's not the right, I don't know, I'm not prescribing strategies, but she just knew, like, that's not going to work. And it was so interesting because she had to get out of her, she tried everything that she thought of the first few weeks, and then she called me, said, I don't know what else to do. So we kind of got in this conversation of, getting her sort of through me asking about her situation. And, she started to realize, I don't know what my daughter needs. I don't know what to do. I've never faced this. She grew up in Ireland. She says, we don't really, in my circle, there were no eating disorders. We didn't even think about ourselves. And she said, through these conversations, she said, I guess I just have to step back and understand what my daughter's going through, because I can't relate to it. And I feel like I have sort of I sort of have a disadvantage. And what was so interesting is I said, to the contrary, because she said, I wish I'd had an eating disorder so I could tell her something. And I said, well, actually, this is exactly where you want to be. What happened is she's thought about it, and she said, I don't, in our next conversation, I didn't try and give her any answers or what to do, because I'm still trying to understand her situation. But she said, in our next call, she said, I realized that I can't figure out what to do in 2 steps. I have to just figure out this step. And this step is I just have to be with her. And she did what I suggested, which I said, well, why don't you ask her what you can do to help her? And be honest with her and say, I have no idea what I'm doing. I kind of wish I'd had an eating disorder so that I could even relate to you, but I want to help you, and tell me what to do. And she said they had 3 conversations that week that were deeper and more honest and open than she's ever had. And the daughter said to her, I wish my friends would talk to me like this. Most of my friends haven't even asked me. I know they've noticed that I've lost weight. They haven't even asked me if I'm okay. And she said, I'm so glad I have you. It was really sweet. And what the thing about it is that she was willing to, there was a few things she did right in there that it empowered both of them in this situation. I want to highlight those here because it's what we do when we travel. One is, for us to face something where we feel like we're in over our heads, we have to have patience, which parents don't do very well, in my opinion. And I put myself in the same category. And
well, it looks like we're up against a deadline. There's no time for patience.
Absolutely, especially if they have something that's threatening their health, or where they might mess with their self-esteem and they might not get it back. So there is a way in which we get impatient, and we want to fix it, partly because we can't stand the fear of what's going to happen if this keeps progressing. And that you've got to be careful of that, because you can only handle things one at a time. The way I like to say, it's like eating a sandwich. You kind of have to do it a bite at it. You can't just shove the whole thing in there. You have to life only happens a step at a time. And what's so interesting is that in any of the other areas, like travel, like your hobby, is if you get stuck and you're willing to kind of slow down and say, well, what do we do first? Ironically, we're most efficient. You do the first thing first, and you get there and you look at the next thing. And that's what happened to this mom. She said, I just need to handle today. And today I just need to start by saying, what do I do? And I'm here for you. And what's so interesting is the daughter had all these sort of insights over these 3 conversations, and they moved more efficiently than most parents that I've seen, especially the ones who have all these other ideas about what they can do. Is you want to throw out all your old ideas.
So not kind of like insights as in the mum managed to teach her about something about the principles and she heard it, or her mum made loads of suggestions and finally she took one of them on board.
Right.
Like, I'm guessing what you mean is like just in that space of having a conversation together, just as normal people have a conversation. The
mom did nothing.
Yeah, the daughter had ideas that were nothing to do with what the mum said. That's what you mean, right?
The daughter basically said, I want to be more popular. And the girls at my school that are popular are skinny. And so I'm trying to be them. And I feel like that's going to work. And in the third conversation, she said, I'm guessing that I'm going to get skinny and be no less popular or likable by these girls. And I don't even really know if I want to be their friends. And mom didn't do anything. the mom just said, what can I do? And the daughter started talking. I'm not saying that's going to happen for everybody, but you're right in that all the mom did was say, I have no idea what to do. Saw that as a first step of, let me just be honest with her, because she felt like she didn't realize until I said it that she could just go and, be completely transparent and human, and how disarming that is and reassuring that is to teenagers that are struggling, is to feel like, okay, well, you don't know what you're doing either. Put her daughter's mind at ease. So you're right, she didn't do anything. And that's the patience.
That is, I love you had to use disarming, but it's so shocking to our kids. I remember sitting down with my daughter and asking her about something, and it's not part of my world, it's not part of my experience. So I was like, I think she was expecting me to either tell her to stop it and get really firm with her, or she was thinking she was going to get told off for it, or that I was going to get worried about it. And I was just really curious. I'm like, I don't get it. That isn't something we would do in my day. Like, tell me like what that's all about. And it just created a space of just a different type of conversation, because then she could explain to me like why she was doing that in her mind. Exactly. And I was just like, I was genuinely, I wasn't putting it on as a strategy. I was like genuinely curious about like, and so how does that work? And does that work then? Is it like, does that get you what you want? Like, I'm really, right. That's like, I had never seen it that way.
That's the irony. Yeah.
Different conversation. That, and not in that she didn't come up with like brilliant ideas in that situation, but I know that it does something in the opening up of that. I don't know what next, but
no, you're right though. It brings, see, what patience does is brings you commit to the moment and leave the problem. Right. You take your agenda and fixing them, everything about them off your mind, and you just, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be present with them, and just say, I'm here. That's all I have.
I've got nothing else.
Right. And what's so refreshing about that is it catches people off guard. Nobody's present. If you walk around your day, very few people are present. And I had a checker at the grocery store that, said, that's a nice ring. And I said, thanks. And I realized he was just hanging out, waiting for groceries. And he said, my mom had a stone just exactly that color. I wonder if it's the same one. And he was just in the moment, he's just hanging out, watching my ring.
Yeah.
How many people, so you don't, until somebody is present, you don't realize how the lack of presence people live in. And that's one of the things that happens when we get concerned, is we lose our patience and our presence. And when you bring a patience, it draws your kid into the moment, and they can get a fresh look at things. You give them a quiet space, and you don't know what they're going to see there. So you don't have to provide insight or answers. They get a fresh look at things, and they see things. So you don't have to author those.
I love it, because what so often happens is that if you sit down and chat with your kids, like what you're looking for is, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And it's kind of like we jump straight to that. And what I'm hearing in what you're saying is like, actually, and sometimes that might be exactly what's required, but just for us to consider the fact that actually this might be a 10 conversation thing, right? It might be like we don't know. Maybe we don't know what to do next.
Exactly.
You set the scene for an openness and an exploration and fresh ideas and new thought in that, without jumping straight to the, okay, so what are you going to do about it tomorrow?
And that's unusual for people, and that's brings me to my next point, to the second part of this, is that on the heels of patience, the other thing this mom did that is what I look for in parents, what I coach them around, what I do, I'm guessing what you do. You have to be able to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to be okay with the discomfort of a problem, and be okay with your kids' discomfort, and have them be in a situation where they're troubled, and to just be okay with that. That it's not typical for people to be able to have their kid be going through something and be suffering and frightened and scared and not feeling like they're enough and they don't have the right friends, and to be able to just have a conversation where you're not forcing a solution. So it's in a way it's
get yourself out of the uncomfortable feeling of
exactly
your child who's distressed. Like it's you want them to feel better so that you can stop worrying.
Right. And you don't, it's sort of, it's why we talk about consciousness so much in the principles, is it, you know, really this is a point, this is highlighting what consciousness does, is that when we get in a feeling of, I don't know what to do, this is scary, where's this going to go, what's going to happen, you do have to, in order to show up to a problem, all hands on deck with you and your kid, you want to be able to say, so this is happening, and to just sit there and have no idea what to do. If you're scared of it, you get shut down as soon as you look at it. And now if you look at yourself in a work setting, when you travel and you miss your flight, that's what happens, is you just, like, I remember being in Greece when I was in college, and I got in a cab, and right at the airport, and the cab driver, really nice guy, we had this really nice, I thought we really had this amazing bonding conversation, and like, oh, I'm really getting to know the people here. And we get there, and I ask him how much it is, and I hand him that amount, and I found out I basically gave him most of my money. And he charged me, 20 times what it costs. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a lesson learned. But I get to my hotel, and they asked me, you know, how was the ride? And anyway, somehow money came up, and I said, well, so I just realized that I spent all my money. I don't know what to do. And so then I learned about wiring money.
Right.
I had to kind of learn that.
Yeah.
But I learned it because I was comfortable knowing I'd completely just got ripped off and felt like we had this nice moment, and I super got lied to the whole time through this person sort of. Yeah. I had to just be comfortable with sort of the hurt and the embarrassment and the panic and the, what if this doesn't work out? I'm stranded. I don't know anybody here. We have to be okay with sort of seeing life and having all these horrible thoughts and being okay with it.
Yeah. And not having to, like, what's the quickest exit route from this feeling?
Right. And what you know what, I think the thing that I found really reassuring as a parent and in working with my clients is that, you know, if you have people, like, I'll have people I talk to when they're 14, and then they'll come see me again, they're 25 and they're engaged and having trouble, and I'll say, so how did things work out? You know, and they'll say, oh, that was fine. I ended up sort of hanging on to that boyfriend because I thought I couldn't get any better, and he basically mistreated me for a year. But I realized what I don't want when I get married. Mm-hmm. And there's something came out of it that was good. And that's the thing about consciousness, is your truth right now, you're going to see a different truth that makes sense of everything, and in a way in which makes everything you went through okay and a learning experience or understandable. And you don't have to know what that is. So it's going to be uncomfortable now because you don't really have perspective on things yet, and you don't understand what's going on. And at some point you'll look back and you will. And frankly, if that's going to happen, who cares if you know what that is right now? So in a way, that the patience and the getting comfortable being uncomfortable, or getting comfortable having things be messy and being okay with it, is the more you can do that as a parent, the more you'll be able to just step into things such as they are, the way you do with work problems, and just say, all right, let's just brainstorm, and maybe one of us will have an idea here at this table, or we'll have an idea in 3 days and somebody will come back and say, how about this? You're okay going into a process and not coming out with an answer, knowing this will get us someplace, but who knows where that'll take us.
Mm.
So that the patience, getting comfortable with the discomfort, and then the last thing is you do have to be willing to not be in control. And really, the simplest way of talking about this for parents is you have to be able to admit when it's time to let go of something, because you have no idea what you're doing. You have to be able to, rather than getting in and grabbing onto a problem and getting intense about it, to be able to know when it's time to step back because what you're doing is not working.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, like the example of the mom that had I gave it in the previous segment, where there's a mom, her son was kind of being avoidant and would get really shut down. He'd been like that for a few years. But she said, I was taking on his sort of personality problems, and I realized, like, I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know what to do with him. I can't. He's getting away with not doing anything around the house and not doing his schoolwork, and he's getting away with being rude to everybody. And I've been sort of intimidated by that, thinking, oh, he's really troubled. And she said, for the first time, I realized, I don't know. I don't know what that is. I kind of feel like I kind of feel like I'm missing something with him, because I don't really understand him like I do my girls.
Mm.
And she said, as soon as I said, I don't know, she went to work. And while she was at work, she said, he's really clever in all other areas. I think he might be manipulating me a little bit. And it wasn't until she let go of he's really troubled and what she thought was going on, and got away from it, that you have to be able to say, I have no idea what's going on. For her, in the same way that mom said to her daughter, I don't know how to help you. I've never had an eating disorder. I've never had a friend with an eating disorder. She just let go of trying to steer the problem and basically said out loud, I have no idea.
Which is different though, because sometimes it feels like we're just going, I give up on you. There's nothing I can do. I absolutely give up. I really am done. There's nothing I can do to solve this problem. I give up. And then I just go into a whole load of guilt and like, you can't just give up on your kid. You really can't give up on your kids. Your role as a parent is to keep on trying.
Right.
And but what you're saying is different. It's like a letting go of control, and heading into an I don't know space, and holding that as an open space, rather than throwing the whole baby out with the bathwater and go, well, like, I don't know.
That's a difference. You're saying this, you are saying the same thing. I have no idea what I'm doing. You can, we often say that sort of as that's us kind of venting our frustration and giving up, because we're disheartened and beat down and discouraged and frustrated. And that's fine. That gets you to the same place, as long as you see where I'm headed, where I'm pointing you, which is, ultimately you want to be able to say, the soft side of you, I don't know what I'm doing, in a way that's where you're saying it from a state of calm.
Yeah. There's
in a way that
from like, oh, I am done with it, I give up on you. Like that's a different feeling in that. Right.
There's a neutrality that we get to in our work problems, where we say, well, I don't know what to do about this. I'm going to take a lunch break. I'm going to sleep on it. There's a way in which you can not know what to do and not have it be coming from a state of weakness and defeat.
Yeah.
In fact, to the contrary, when the times in the areas where we're able to say, I don't know what to do here. It's sort of you're standing on a floor and there's so much ahead of you. You don't know what that looks like yet, versus being at the ceiling. And I think it's a feeling you're looking for, that everybody knows it when they see it in other areas, but I don't know that they have the vision for, you cannot know what to do, even though it's your kid and you're the only one responsible for them. You don't have to, you can have chaos and mayhem and suffering and have the same feeling of, well, I don't know what we'll do with this, and and it have from a state of reflection versus a state of defeat and pressure and ego. So there is a feeling, and I'm suggesting you sort of have to look in other areas of your life and say, all right, that's what I'm looking for over here. And there is a way in which sometimes we have to have people point it out and say, you know, you can do that here. In the same way that if you're in a work situation and you have somebody that's panicking because you have a problem that's a big deal and you don't know what to do about it, you can say, look, I think we just need to sit with this a little bit. We think we've exhausted our options. We don't know what to do yet. And it doesn't, you know, that you guys should be trusting you instead of that person. That's the side of you want. So in a way, it's sort of the, there's that feeling of patience, the getting comfortable with the discomfort, and the willingness to not be in control. They're all sort of pointing to the same thing. And there will be one of these, any one of these resonates with you. That's all it takes. That's sort of your vehicle you want to be traveling in. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to do all three of these. It's that you get some sense of what this looks like on you. And if you may have to look outside of your parenting, or in your parenting with another kid. I had the same parent that has a kid with an eating disorder, also has another kid who has ADHD. That was really a problem when he was younger. And she said, you know, it's funny, I handled that in a way where I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have any intensity around it. She said, I was so neutral, and I kind of learned on the job, and I was fine with having feeling in over my head. And I never had intensity about it ever. And it's still something that he struggles with, but we really have a handle on it, and he's going to be fine. And that's the part of it that you know, sometimes you have to look at a different kid, but what I'm pointing to, we have this in there. It's just whether we see, oh, that's relevant here. That's the secret weapon that I'm missing.
So that, just linking it back to the first section, is like we also have everything we need already installed. Like we already have areas of our lives where we have that patience, where we're willing to say, I don't know, and where we sit in uncomfortable feelings all the time and don't give it a second thought.
Exactly.
So we already know that. We know how to do that. This is not new skills that you're teaching us. This is just looking to see where we already have it installed, and we do it without even thinking. That's why it's not top of your mind that you already do this, but you do it without thinking. And it's like almost bringing that capability and shining it in this area.
You do it kind of like you do with a hangover. For those of you that get hangovers, is you can have a hangover and feel horrible and like you're going to die. And you hate everyone that's making noise, and you hate the lighting in your house, and you can hate everything, and you don't take the experience that seriously. You know, it's temporary. And that's essentially what the experience of discomfort, that's our understanding of the principles, completely intact about hangovers. We get this experience is temporary. Those people aren't louder than they normally are. This will clear itself out. This is just what happens when you drink. And that it'll go, I'll land on my feet. This will go away. You don't even have to think about, let me make sure I get the toxins out of there. Let me sweat extra. Sorry if this is kind of graphic. But you get that life sort of, that thought writes itself. And that there's a system that's taking care of us, is you don't really worry about it. And we have all the patience and the being comfortable with the discomfort and the willingness to not be in control. It is a funny thing how easy that is. We don't think anything of it. And yet we do have this profound understanding about hangovers that if you could just sprinkle on your parenting, you'd be golden.
I love it. What a great note to end on.
Well, good. Well, thank you for having me. And I look forward to the next two segments.
Thank you.
Yeah.